A billionaire just slapped his pregnant wife right in front of a private jet crew. Everyone saw it, but no one dared to react. He thought he was in control of her, of the situation, of everything. But what he didn't know was that someone else had been watching the entire time. Someone sitting quietly in the cockpit waiting. Because that pilot wasn't just a pilot. And the moment that plane took off, everything changed. His power, his control, his entire empire gone in seconds. Stay till the end, because this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about revenge, hidden truth, and a twist that will shock you. The roar of jet engines hummed softly across the private runway. Golden sunset light reflected off the polished surface of a luxury aircraft, parked like a symbol of power and control. A group of uniformed staff stood in perfect formation near the stairs, heads slightly bowed, eyes lowered. They knew who was arriving, and they knew better than to speak. A sleek black car rolled to a stop just meters away from the jet. The door opened. A tall, sharply dressed man stepped out first. Late 30s, impeccable suit, cold presence, the kind of man who didn't just walk into a place, he owned it. Behind him, slowly, carefully, stepped a pregnant woman. Her hand rested protectively over her stomach as she tried to keep her balance in heels. Her face was calm, but her eyes told a different story. Tired, quiet, enduring, the man didn't even look back at her. "Move faster," he snapped, adjusting his cufflinks. She flinched slightly, then followed, each step heavier than the last. The staff exchanged brief glances. They had seen this before, but no one dared to interfere. As they approached the jet stairs, the woman paused for just a second. Catching her breath, that's when it happened. The man turned sharply, and without warning, his hand struck across her face. The sound echoed across the empty runway, sharp, cold, unforgiving. The woman stumbled sideways, barely catching herself before falling. A gasp escaped from one of the crew members, but it was quickly silenced. The man's eyes scanned them, daring anyone to react. No one did, no one except one. Inside the cockpit, a pair of eyes had been watching everything. Still, focused. Unmoving, the pilot. He sat behind the controls, hands resting calmly, but his grip slowly tightened. His jaw clenched, not out of anger, but control. Because what no one on that runway knew was that the woman standing outside was his wife, not legally, not publicly, but secretly, and the child she carried was his. Outside, the man scoffed. "Pathetic," he muttered. "You can't even walk properly anymore." The woman lowered her gaze, not in submission, but in silence. Because she knew something he didn't, something that was about to change everything. "I told you to behave today," he continued. "We have investors waiting, don't embarrass me." She said nothing, just nodded slightly. That seemed to satisfy him, for now. He turned and began walking up the jet stairs. She followed step by step, pain hidden behind composure. As she reached the top, she paused, just for a moment. Her eyes lifted, meeting the cockpit window, and for a split second, their gazes locked. The pilot didn't move, didn't react, but something passed between them, silent, powerful, unbreakable. Then she looked away and stepped inside. The cabin was everything you'd expect from a billionaire's jet. Cream leather seats, gold accents, soft ambient lighting, luxury in every detail. The man dropped into his seat immediately, already scrolling through his phone. "Sit," he said without looking up. She took her seat across from him, carefully, gently. A flight attendant approached. "Would you like anything, sir?" she asked politely. "Just make sure everything runs on time," he replied coldly. The engines began to power up. Outside, the sun dipped lower. Inside the cockpit, the pilot closed his eyes for a brief second, then opened them, focused, controlled, professional. But beneath that calm exterior, a storm was building. Minutes later, the jet was airborne, high above the clouds, far from witnesses, far from consequences, or so the billionaire thought. Inside the cabin, tension hung thick in the air. The woman stared out the window, lost in thought. "Until you're quiet," the man said suddenly. She didn't respond. He leaned forward slightly. "Still thinking about earlier?" he asked, a hint of mockery in his tone. Silence, that annoyed him. "You should be grateful," he continued. "Without me, you'd still be nothing." Her fingers tightened slightly, but her voice remained calm. "Is that what you believe?" she asked softly. He smirked. "I know it." A pause. Then she turned to face him, and for the first time there was something different in her eyes, confidence. "You shouldn't be so sure," she said. He laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Don't start with me," he said. "You're in no position." Inside the cockpit, the pilot heard every word through the cabin audio feed. His expression didn't change, but his hand moved slightly, adjusting a control. Subtle, unnoticeable, but deliberate. Back in the cabin, the man poured himself a drink. "After this deal," he said casually, "things are going to change." She watched him carefully. "How?" she asked. He took a sip, then smiled. "I won't need you anymore." Silence, heavy, dangerous. "And what does that mean?" she asked. He leaned back, relaxed, confident. "It means," he said, "once this child is born, we're done." Her heart pounded, but her face remained still. "And the baby?" she asked quietly. He shrugged. "We'll see." That was it. That was the moment. Something inside her shifted, not fear. Not sadness, but resolve. Minutes later, a voice came over the intercom. Calm, controlled, professional. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your pilot speaking." The woman froze. That voice, she knew it better than anyone. "We will be making a slight adjustment to our flight path due to weather conditions," the voice continued. The man barely reacted, but the woman, her eyes slowly lifted. Inside the cockpit, the pilot's gaze hardened. This was it. Back in the cabin, the man frowned slightly. "Adjustment," he muttered. "I didn't approve any." Before he could finish, the plane shifted, not violently, but noticeably. His drink spilled slightly. "What the hell is this?" he snapped. The intercom clicked again. "This is a necessary adjustment," the pilot said calmly. The woman's lips curved just slightly. Moments later, the cockpit door opened, and the pilot stepped out, tall, composed, uniform crisp, authority in every step. The man looked up, annoyed. "Who gave you permission to leave the cockpit?" he demanded. The pilot didn't answer. He just walked forward, slowly, deliberately, until he stood directly in front of them. Then he looked at the woman, softly, then back at the man, cold. "You've made a mistake," he said. The billionaire scoffed. "Excuse me?" The pilot's gaze didn't waver. "You should never have touched her." Silence, heavy, explosive. The man stood up instantly. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" he snapped. Pilot stepped closer, unshaken. "Yes," he said calmly, "a man who's about to lose everything." The billionaire laughed, loud, mocking. "This is my jet," he said. "My crew, my rules." The pilot tilted his head slightly. "No," he said, "it's not." The words hit differently. The woman stood slowly behind him, her hand resting on her stomach, calm, powerful. The billionaire's smile faded. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. The pilot reached into his jacket and pulled out a document, folded. "Official," he placed it on the table. "Read it," he said. The man hesitated, then grabbed it. His eyes scanned the page, and then everything changed. His face went pale. This isn't possible," he whispered, but it was. The ownership had changed, the jet, the company, everything transferred, legally, irrevocably, to her. The woman stepped forward, standing beside the pilot. "No," she said calmly, "it's very possible." The billionaire looked between them, confused, desperate. "What is this?" he demanded. The pilot met his gaze, and for the first time there was no restraint. "I'm not just your pilot," he said. A pause, then, "I'm her husband." The silence that followed was absolute. The billionaire staggered back. No, that's insane. "And the child," the pilot continued, "is mine." The man's world shattered in that moment. Everything he thought he controlled, gone. The woman looked at him one last time, not with anger, not with hate, but with finality. "You were never in control," she said softly. "And now," she glanced at the pilot, then back at him, "you never will be." If you want more powerful stories like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Comment below, did he deserve what happened, or was this revenge too far?